thanks for watching. I'm going to talk about what I call the biggest and as yet little-known hoax of the 20th and early 21st centuries that has been perpetrated against an unsuspecting America and world. First, let me back up a bit. A few weeks ago, I learned that a movie was being made about Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged. Now, you might be surprised to know that I was excited about the movie, me being the liberal Democrat and all. And the fact is, I like Ayn Rand's books, but then again, I like the genre. I'm a big fan of superhero movies and novels, and that's really what The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged are. And if you don't believe me, let me talk to you about some of Wikipedia's list of typical superhero traits, and I'll just mention a few of them. First of all, they have extraordinary powers, like industrial, entrepreneurial, or scientific abilities above that of the general public. They have a strong moral code. The individual and their abilities is all that matters. They have a supporting cast of friends: Dagny Taggart, Hank Rearden, Francisco de Ancona, John Galt. They're the super friends of laissez-faire economics. And they have independent wealth, and in Atlas Shrugged, that's mostly stolen gold by Ragnar Janiscold. They also have a headquarter or base of operations, and this would be Galt's Gulch in Atlas Shrugged. I'd add one item to the list, and that is the situations and actions depicted are obviously surreal. While Rand intended, and conservatives have treated Atlas Shrugged as an economic revelation, I've never found anything real about Atlas Shrugged. In the book, the entire rest of the world is either communist or about to become that way, for instance. In the book, the main protagonist, John Galt, develops a motor that creates massive amounts of free usable electricity out of the static electricity in the air. Now, this entirely fictional and scientifically impossible motor is key to the entire book, because without it, the independent community that the chosen few hide away in, called Galt's Gulch, could not exist. It would have no energy source. Another issue I had with Rand's creations has to do with the intimate relationships of the main characters. I mean, the family and romantic lives of the characters are stilted, with a total absence of any warmth between them. And even worse, much worse, Rand had this idea that women really want to be overpowered and taken by force by the quote-unquote right man, even if they seem to object. And in The Fountainhead, the main character and supposed hero, Howard Rourke, rapes the woman he is pursuing, and she then becomes his girlfriend and ultimately his wife. Now, regarding the rape, Rand said, if it is rape, then it is rape by engraved invitation. And I'd like to hear the opinion of any women viewing this video regarding that statement. I've always held that Rand's view of the proper way for men and women to interact is among the most bizarre of her philosophy. A few months ago, I learned another strange aspect of the whole Rand story, and apparently late in her life, she wanted to get on Medicaid and Social Security, but didn't want people to know about it, so she used an assumed name and Social Security number to get government benefits. Yeah, the most anti-government and anti-handout person in the history of America took government assistance and illegally obtained it at that. I thought that would be the ugliest and strangest aspect of the Ayn Rand story, and it was, at least until now. And this is where I get back to the hoax. I call what I'm about to tell you a hoax because Rand presented the books and the protagonists therein as the proper way for people to exist, culturally, economically, and romantically. Howard Rourke is the exact right way for a male architect to behave. John Galt is exactly the right way for a mechanical engineer scientist male to behave. And Howard Rearden and Dagny Taggart are the exact right way to behave for a male and female steel magnate and railroad executive, respectively. The Ayn Rand Institute, or ARI, helps promulgate this idea of Rand's objectivist theories and her brand of laissez-faire economics as the model for human behavior and existence. Imagine my surprise when I learned that the basis for the personalities of the characters is a vicious serial killer on whom Ayn Rand developed an obsession in her 20s. Yes, as explained in a February 2010 article in Alternate and a 2009 article in Slate, as well as 2 biographies of Rand, those characters, who she and the Ayn Rand Institute present us as the vision of the perfect humans, are based on a 1920s serial killer by the name of William Hickman. Now, just to give you an idea of how brutal and sadistic this guy was, he kidnapped a 12-year-old girl, killed and dismembered her, left the head attached to the torso, got the father to meet him at night in a deserted place to ransom the daughter, and propped up the daughter's eyes with wire so that it would appear as if she were alive. He took the money from the father and drove off and threw the daughter's remains out the window a few blocks away. That is the guy that is the underlying model for the hero of Rand's books. Now, I want to be clear about what Ayn Rand admired about Hickman. In her notes about him, she wrote, "Other people do not exist for him, and he does not see why they should. He has no regard whatsoever for all that society holds sacred, and with a consciousness all his own. He has the true innate psychology of a Superman. He can never realize and feel other people. She went further and said Hickman was a brilliant, unusual, exceptional boy with immense, explicit egotism. A strong man can eventually trample society under his feet. That boy, referring to Hickman, was not strong enough. Now remember, we're talking about the author, character, book, and philosophy that many prominent Republicans and conservatives of the past 50 years have cited as heavily influencing their beliefs. People like Ronald Reagan, Clarence Thomas, Alan Greenspan, and current Republican congressmen like Michelle Bachmann and Paul Ryan. The entire Tea Party movement holds Rand and her theories in extremely high regard. I think that probably virtually every prominent libertarian or Republican over the past 50 years has derived some of their belief system from Rand's books. By her own admission in her private notes, Rand based several characters on Hickman's personality, including Howard Rourke, Hank Rearden, and John Galt. Now apparently, Rand realized that her having based these models of the superhuman on a serial killer would be met with some consternation. You think? So she wrote an entry in her journals that aimed to explain it all away. Referring to her heroes and Hickman, she wrote that they were, quote-unquote, very far from him, of course. The outside of Hickman, but not the inside. Much deeper and much more. A Hickman with a purpose, and without the degeneracy. It's more exact to say that the model is not Hickman, but what Hickman suggested to me. What Hickman suggested to her? Of all the billions of people on the planet during her lifetime, Rand thought that the best way to model her super characters was on what Hickman suggested to her. Inspiration from a completely psychotic and murderous sociopath. Where was the Ayn Rand Institute with all of this? Why weren't they forthcoming with this information? What did they know, and when did they know it? Why did it take over 30 years from the date of her death for this information to come out, when the Ayn Rand Institute has access to all of her notes and journals? I think this is a hoax, and a terrible hoax. The readers of The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, among other Rand books, should have had a foreword or some other explanation in the books that laid out this important detail. I mean, we're not talking about a bipolar artist painting a work of art. We're talking about books whose characters and the way they behaved and the beliefs they espoused became the model for a significant segment of the American body politic. The fact that those characters have the underlying psychological makeup of a serial killer is pretty important information for people to know. And if characters with this kind of psychology at their core are the kinds of people who Rand suggests prefer and thrive in a laissez-faire economic system, that is important for a reader to know. Now, based on this new information, I propose a new definition for Rand's objectivist philosophy. Objectivism and laissez-faireism are the psychology of a serial killer projected onto micro and macroeconomics. Is it at long last time to bury Ayn Rand's books and philosophies in the dustbin of time? This laissez-fairist who cheated to obtain Medicare and Social Security, who admired rape, at least in certain circumstances, and quite frankly, the admiration of rape in any circumstance is appalling. And finally, a person who based the supposed model of the superhumans in her book on the psychology of a serial killer. Yes, I think Rand's overextended 15 minutes are up.